The Chinese video game market is absolutely massive, and there are a lot of companies that have tried to wriggle their way into it to make a few extra bucks, but now we're finding out that Tencent and NetEase have lost billions in stock value after China set strict limits on video game monetization and banned gacha mechanics from young players. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or through YouTube membership. So, I wanted to start off with this Bounding into Comics article. It says, in a development that's likely to be lamented by investors but celebrated by those who believe the overall medium has been made objectively worse over the years, thanks to the shameless attempts by such entities to monetize it, two of the biggest players in the country's mobile gaming sphere, Tencent and NetEase, have seen billions wiped off of their respective stock prices after the Chinese government introduced new local regulations regarding video game monetization. Now, of course, I have absolutely no love for Tencent or NetEase. I just do not care really what happens to them. But this could mean multiple things for us, even though we are not in China, because there are a lot of massive companies that could be affected by this. It says, first announced by the East Asian country on December 22nd. Per a recap, these are the new rules that specify that developers may no longer offer sequential interaction rewards such as daily login rewards or bonuses relating to making several purchases in a row. No daily login rewards makes sense judging their other rules, which is like people can only play for a certain amount of time every day. That means that, you shouldn't be incentivizing potentially breaking those rules, but it also says bonuses relating to making several purchases in a row. This is just a standard practice I do not think should be in the gaming industry at all whatsoever. No, there should not be bonuses relating to making several purchases in a row. Like, hey, you swiped your credit card 5 times today, here's a free little pet for your MMO adventures. Like, that should not be a thing in general. Then it says must limit how much money a player can add to their digital wallets for in-game purchases, and they're not specifying minors here. It says ban the practice of speculation and auctioning from their in-game economies, must not offer any gacha mechanics like chance-based blind box reward systems such as loot boxes or booster pack to minors, and must store their servers within China itself. And as of writing, it is unknown whether this rule refers to an entire company's server network, those relating to any game released within the country, or those specifically used to host Chinese user data. So there is a lot to unpack here. Now, is it necessarily bad to not allow kids to swipe their parents' credit cards? I personally don't think so, okay? I've said it before. Loot boxes, yes, are essentially gambling, and I know a lot of people would agree with that, so children shouldn't be accessing them. I don't think the government should be able to put restrictions on what adults can do, but a child can't walk into a casino, so they shouldn't be able to buy loot boxes either. Obviously, then we get into the conversation about how adults should be deciding what their children can and can't do, but we are talking about restrictions here that also apply to adults, like the digital wallet part. It's just limiting a player's wallet, not a minor's. So it says, limit how much money a player can add to their wallet for in-game purchases. I could be tapped out at $100, and even though I'm not a kid, it still affects me. So no, I don't agree with the Chinese limits, that people that are 18 can play video games, or you can only play for a certain amount of time every day, all of these different things. That's not something that should ever be in the purview of a government. It's an authoritarian maneuver, and I will not agree that as an adult I, shouldn't be allowed to spend X, Y, or Z amount of money. I should be able to put as much as I want on my digital wallet. It's as simple as that. They go on to talk about gacha mechanics like chance-based blind box reward systems such as loot boxes or booster packs. Does that mean TCGs will now be affected too? Obviously, there are TCGs that are digital, but these types of rules rules will most likely, spill out to non-digital things like card games. So Pokemon and Magic the Gathering, which are in China, so they can only be sold to people over the age of 18 now, because again, it's that this one specifies to minors. And then this is going even beyond money. I mean, they are talking about things like auction houses. So they're talking about like gold in World of Warcraft. These in game economies, yes, mimic real world ones, but they still don't equate to actual money. But because they share similarities, they're now banning it. Yes, you could buy in game currency with real money, but then we could get into arguing, the merits of gambling laws and what's defined as gambling and what's not all day, and if it should be for adults only. But then this to me is the major issue here. Must store their servers within China itself. That has nothing to do with microtransactions or loot boxes. It's the Chinese government wanting to control the information that's going through these companies. If it's not clarified, to specify only Chinese-based user data, then that is a huge problem. It comes back down to the idea of TikTok being owned by ByteDance. Sure, I know that's a different situation because it's not a game, but it comes down to things like data storage. You have people in governments, especially in the United States, who are very concerned about any data being stored in China. I mean, the whole TikTok controversy was that people didn't want any of their US user data to be stored in China. And during the Senate hearings, they said that they were moving everything to Austin, Texas, and they were, dancing around ByteDance, the Chinese company controlled by the CCP essentially, and what access they have to that data. You have massive games like Genshin Impact, which is MiHoYo, and Diablo Immortal, maintained by NetEase, that have servers in many regions across the world, especially in the United States. And if, China is telling NetEase and MiHoYo and Tencent all of their servers have to be in China, that's a huge issue. That means they want absolute control over the data, being able to access it all, which is in stark contrast to what TikTok, yes, again, not a gaming company, but they said they wanted to accomplish during the Senate hearings, which is, they were going to move all of the servers that have been accessible by the CCP to Austin, Texas. I mean, China is going above and beyond here, and over the years I've had to talk about them, banning things like blood in video games, bones in video games. They don't allow a lot of violence anymore, but this is going above and beyond because we're talking about storing servers within China and user data, your data, my data. If you play a MiHoYo game, if you play something like Genshin Impact, I mean, that is your data that we're talking about here. And I personally do not play, MiHoYo games. I personally do not care about the games that are being talked about here. These aren't companies that I actively support, and there's no love lost, but how the CCP is going about their methods of control are not good, even for us. And I know that people are going to see, China in maybe the title and then not think that it's all that important, but it most certainly is. And this could start affecting us. It is, sad to see that we have to talk about another situation of people, potentially getting screwed over. Consumers like you, consumers like I. And over the years, China, yes, has, done a lot of things that developers have been worried about, like limiting play times for minors and just, human beings in general. And of course, I will never agree that there should be limits on, the amount of time an adult can play video games or the amount of money that somebody could spend on video games, but we are talking in part here about young players, but this spills over even from young players. A lot of these don't even just specifically address young players. We're talking about, user data that is anybody who plays these games, and I will be keeping a close eye on the situation, but this is definitely something that is extremely worrying, and I think a lot of people are going to be talking about in the weeks to come. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this and of course found it important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.